Hey guys, it's Chandler again, and this is Elections Vlog number 2. Today we're going to talk about what, to be honest, is my most hated issue of every campaign, because it comes up every year, and it's probably, of everything we discuss, the thing WILUSU actually has the least control over, and that's study space. WILUSU only owns the FNCC, which means that's really the only building it has any form of say in what happens. Now they can try and push the university to do different projects in different areas, but they don't actually have control of any other space on campus. So I want you to keep that in mind as you read candidates' platforms or as we talk about people's different proposals of what they want to do to improve study space on campus. Don't let this be a deciding factor in who you vote for. Focus on the bigger issues for that. First, I'm going to talk about Chris Walker. But I'm not really going to talk about Chris because he doesn't address study space in his platform. Now, that can be a good or a bad thing. It's kind of dependent on whether this is an important issue for you, but I can't really say anything more because he doesn't say anything about it. Okay, second we're going to talk about Caleb. Caleb only has 2 real points in his platform focused on study space, and it's kept very condensed. First, he wants to better utilize the spaces that we already have, such as the concourse. But his platform doesn't really go into detail about how we would do this. Again, concourse isn't WILUSU-owned space, so how are you going to better utilize that space? Are you going to add furniture? How? Who's paying for it? And what are you going to do to get there? And he doesn't really talk about any other spaces on campus. However, his second point, however brief, is a really good one. And it's that the campus needs some sort of system. He talks about using it over the TVs that we have, but some sort of system that tells students what classrooms are available. This is a really good idea. Again, it would have huge cost associated with it. It would really be under the university's discretion, but if you can find a way to advocate for it and make it happen, that would be awesome. So my question to Caleb is, how are you going to make this system happen? And when you talk about utilizing spaces that we already have better, what spaces are you talking about and how are you going to utilize those better? I'm on a platform talking about platforms. Third, we're going to talk about Jennifer. And the first thing in Jennifer's platform that addresses study space is more furniture in the concourse and multi-purpose room at Brantford and creative uses for spaces that we already have. None of this is really that original. Everyone talks about better using the spaces we have. I mean, you have to talk about how, and you haven't done that. So how are you going to do this? It's the same as I've mentioned with the other candidates. But you do get points for mentioning Brantford. Mind you, you are from Brantford. So I'm not really sure how much of an achievement that is. That'd be really bad if you forgot them. But kudos still for remembering both campuses. One of the really interesting parts that Jen brings up in her platform is to analyze the spaces we already have, figure out who uses them, whether they're quiet lounge study spaces, and how we can future utilize these spaces the best. And that's funny, but I think I've heard about something like this before, and it was called the study space audit, and we have one. It was done last year, and it exists. So the idea is good, but if you've done your research, you would know someone's already done this. So then my question becomes not, how are you going to evaluate these spaces, but A, why don't you know that this already exists, and B, how are you going to use the study space audit to implement better changes? That Jen's raised is that booking rooms needs to be easier for students as students. Center your spirit. Center your spirit. The first thing Annie talks about in her platform about study space is using temporary study spaces like the turret, upper concourse, Senate and board, all of these places. Now this is a good idea, don't get me wrong, but it's been raised so many times before, and the one about the upper concourse has been executed before, as in the fall exams. More importantly, spaces like the turret can't just be open to students because of rules. I don't know, ask someone else. But they can't just be open to students. You have to pay staff to be there. So suddenly these temporary study spaces start costing money. And that's not to say that it's astronomical amounts of money or it shouldn't be spent, but that's something you haven't recognized and might need to justify. Annie, you do get bonus points for mentioning the study space audit and actually knowing that it exists. Kudos to you for that. That's research kind of well done. But the problem is, you say you want to implement recommendations from it, but you don't go into any specifics. What recommendations? What do you want to implement, and how are you going to implement it? Just saying you're going to implement recommendations is like saying, I'm going to hire a consultant. It's kind of an empty statement. I want to know how you're going to do it. Show actionable steps. Hi, my name's Jim, and you might remember me from such educational videos. Alright, let's wrap this up. First, I want to apologize for this one not being quite as funny, if you even thought my other one was funny. It's hard to make study space funny, I didn't even get a good sexual innuendo in there anywhere, so I'll try harder next time. One thing I would love though is I want candidates to start responding. Answer the questions I've asked, but more importantly, defend your platforms. Take it that step further. Don't use this as people getting down on your platform. Use it to prove what you really know and what you really are going to do. That'll make you a good candidate. Lastly, I am going to give ratings on this, and I've got to say, if I have to give a top place to any platform on Study Space, it is going to go to Danny for the practicality and research she's done ahead of time. I don't really want to give anyone second place because I feel the other 4 candidates, all your platforms for Study Space, are relatively similar and kind of on the same level. They're not very innovative. But I will give a shout out to Caleb because I think the idea about having a way for students to know what rooms are available at what times is really cool. That being said, guys, that's all for this video. Starting Sunday, I'm going to be putting out a video every day. I'm going to talk about the referendum questions, why you should vote, and I'm going to try and touch on some other big issues. Again, suggestions, ideas, if you hate me, just throw it below, not pointing downstairs, I mean in the comments section. Leave it for me, and I will do my best to answer everything I can.